Hello and welcome to the Cloud Blue Podcast, another live edition of our Q&A. I'm your host, Dan Rolinson, joined by John Townley for this one. And this podcast is, of course, sponsored by NordVPN. And the best discount code available is in the top line of the description. Now, this episode, John, we tend to, with the Q&As, have a chat about whatever it is that comes up and then get the title afterwards. When you go live, you need the title first. So I've gone for Villa's centre-back crisis, Monchi's recruitment, and solving PSR problems. Those are, I think, topics that we're going to discuss based on what the questions are, but we'll see.
Yep.
This is a live version of the podcast for those that are listening on catch up. A, because things move quite quickly. B, we don't really have much time in terms of work today to get this edited and out. So we thought we'd do it live, wing our way through it, see where we go. We've got a Celtic preview on Tuesday, so we won't be discussing Celtic at all in this episode and whether who's going to be playing in defence. We'll come to that later on in the week, aka tomorrow. John, how's things, mate? You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. Yeah, shame about yesterday's result. But no, yeah, doing well, thank you. I'm looking forward to a very busy week, obviously on the pitch as well. Two very important games in obviously two different competitions, and obviously the final week of the transfer window, or well, 7 days anyway, in terms of next Monday's the deadline. I think I said that in a previous episode to have February 3rd as a deadline day. It feels weird,
isn't it?
Yeah, like I'm not using the word January window anymore because that is just factually incorrect now. So, yeah, looking forward to that. Villa could be pretty busy, or at least one player is going to be coming through the door, another defender. We'll see what happens elsewhere. Other players going to leave too. I don't know if we'll be talking about that in this episode, but yeah, potentially a very, very busy week.
Yeah, very busy week in terms of fixtures. Obviously, the transfer window's still open. We still don't know yet about anything further from Tyrone Mings' scan, so I didn't want to do a big section about centre-back, and then it comes out on Monday evening or Tuesday morning that Mings is okay. So we wanted to do this live to talk about things as things are at bang on midday on Monday. Just to prove this is live, there's a few comments saying, morning, AVFC Stato, Lenin, gaming and stuff, says morning, fellas. And Giggs Sharma's jumped in straight away saying, will Tyrone play on Wednesday? Told you we're not doing this yet. We'll do a Celtic preview where we'll discuss that game specifically. Let's get into these questions then. First of all, from friend of the show, Rob Warner, who simply says, can either of you play on the left side of central defence? Is it getting that bad, John? Are you going to have to play on Wednesday?
Yeah, honestly, if you're allowed to play 12 players in a team and I had to play behind Tyrone Mings, I think I'd still struggle.
It'd still be a problem.
Yeah, exactly. I can't play at left-sided centre-back.
You're left-footed, aren't you?
No.
Both feet.
I was gonna big yourself up kind of thing. There's the kind of the natural answer there, but no, I'm definitely not left-footed. Yeah, obviously it's a big problem now for Villa. I think we're going to get onto it later on about kind of why Emery brought on Ian Maatsen and put Luca Dean as the left-sided centre-back. But yeah, clearly we are very light in that position now, having sold Diego Carlos to Fenerbahce. He pushed to leave Villa though, so it's not a situation where Villa, I know there's been a bit of criticism of, why would you sell Carlos before you had someone come in? Maybe that was a bit of an oversight because
I don't know. I've seen a lot of this as well, but sometimes is this just not the nature of the transfer dominoes that you get that offer from Carlos, thinking that Villa are going to land low at Bardet, that falls through for its own various reasons. You then can't stumble on Diego Carlos any further, and you have to cut ties for whatever reason. The finances are good. If we delay that, we might never make the money we get for Diego Carlos again. The wages off the books. I think we've suffered from West Ham. Absolutely, because of what happened with Tyrone Mings. But in the long term, that decision to shift Diego Carlos in January is absolutely the right one. It's just a victim of circumstance that Villa couldn't get their first choice centre-back in. If Villa get a centre-back in before Wolves, the Diego Carlos thing's irrelevant.
Yeah, I tend to kind of lean on your side of the argument there as well. The only thing I would say is that I would, maybe speaking to Bade, and I know this isn't the ideal situation of how to kind of operate, but at least get a sense of, does Bade want to join the team rather than kind of be in negotiations for days?
You would think that would have been done, wouldn't you? That kind of due diligence beforehand.
Well,
maybe things changed on his side. We
possibly,
don't know.
I don't know, but he obviously didn't want to join because of kind of concerns over his game time himself. But what I would say about this is that, yeah, you are right about Carlos, but also
game time in the sense that he'll be playing every single minute.
I think, but this is kind of the point I'm getting to. Emery views the two centre-back roles as two different positions, as in left side and right side, which is something we've spoken about a lot of times before about, why can't we build up in a with two centre back like Mings and Powell, for example. Why can't we play two left-footed centre backs? And I've said this a lot, that I just think in terms of how you build up, it looks very different, and it's it would be a big concern for me as well in terms of how we play centre backs of the same foot, basically. Sorry. So that's why he brought on Luke Dean. But I think he views Bogard as the kind of backup to Konsa right now. The backup to Mings, however, there isn't one. That should be Mings and Pau Torres when he returns. So it was a bit of a risk that we've run in terms of only having Mings, a player who's just come back from a very long injury. So, yeah, it's obviously a shame for him that he's now picked up another injury, but Emery said after the game that it's not something that will be keeping him out long term, and that they're positive about it after the first test. And Mings himself obviously went on Instagram and said that it's not a serious injury. So hopefully we're talking about kind of matter of weeks. I'm not going to put a number on that, but one where hopefully Emery will say on Tuesday, yeah, it's okay to go in 2-3 weeks, that sort of thing. I don't know if that's not a fact, but yeah, that's what I'm hoping for anyway. We'll miss a few games, you'd have thought, but yeah, we're clearly light there now.
Let's stick with the centre back then, get into these questions. Matt asks, we are a generation of a lot of football manager players. A lot think they have an idea of X player can play in Y player's role. I'm thinking about Mings going off. There were different theories about who should go into the centre back role. A common thought seemed to be that Kamara moving back and Bogard or McGinn going into midfield, which seemed to be the most logical move based on football manager style thinking. But on what level of thinking does Dean at centre back come into? I really cannot fathom the logic or think where this comes from. I definitely think it harmed Maatsen too. Now, on defence of Emery, we've heard his comments afterwards, and you will know because you were there, he wanted to have a left footer, basically, and Bogard is not that. It really does feel as simple as that to me. He wants a left footer on that side. Mm-hmm. We've been asked a lot on the podcast about Dean in the left of a back three, which I think is still different to playing the left-sided defender of a back four. To be the third kind of outside left back and still being able to float around a little bit, to be an outright centre back is not Luca Dean's position, and Sunday proved that. But was that the right move? Because we were dreadful after that.
Yeah, and I think that the fact he changed two positions, left back and left centre back, that's going to essentially creating two potential issues there. I did think that Bogard coming on was what Emery should have done. I think in that situation where we already want to look, and I know this kind of goes against what I've just said about in terms of how we build up, but I think we can kind of change our game plan a little bit, maybe go a bit more direct. I would have played Bogard at centre-back with Konsa, and I would have kept Kamara in the midfield anyway, because he was having, again, like a sensational game. What he brings in the midfield, I don't want to change that at all. So, yeah, for me, Bogard was the player who should have come on at centre-back, and you try and limit essentially giving him the ball and playing out in tight spaces. You say go more direct. Can you play off the midfielders a bit more? Use the channels, that sort of thing. So we are 1-0 up in the game, and I felt very confident during it, especially when Mings was playing. They would be okay. I think we'd probably go on to win that 2 or 3-0, to be perfectly honest. I think we were really good in the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Obviously, West Ham came into it a bit more. And while Mings coming off was clearly the turning point in the game, I was a bit disappointed still how we played anyway. I know Mings is a very important part of what we're doing, and especially because there's no backup essentially to him at the moment. But I thought even going forward, no one would punch the ball into the final third between pockets of space. I don't really recall us having a chance in the second half, unless I'm wrong. I don't remember it. There's a couple of moments where Duran sort of got in behind, but nothing really of note came of it. I think Marlon had one shot on target. So yeah, like I was kind of a bit let down. When you're playing in front of the hole, you expect us to be, for at least a 10-minute period camped in their half really, but we never really had that. And I don't think that's only down to Mings. So a bit disappointed in terms of how we played in the second half anyway. But yeah, Mings was obviously the turning point. But we had half time to fix things and change things. I was a little surprised to see Maatsen come on, to be perfectly honest. But Dean has played at centre back before in his career. At different clubs he's played at, but I think it's a very different environment doing it when you're doing it for Villa, a team who aren't like PSG or Barcelona and trying to win the league. It's a different sort of task for him, I think. So, yeah, a real shame not to come away with 3 points, but I said before, we still have some winnable games coming up. We've still got quite a few home games, trip to Wolves, that's a game that we can win. So, yeah, still positive about where we are. It's just a shame that now, with Mings out, what we're going to do, we're going to have to juggle a few things. And if the new centre back comes in, well, does he stick to his principle of left-footed player has to play at left centre back? Because if he doesn't, then I'd question why Bogard didn't come on, basically.
Yeah, there's a kind of counterpoint from AB in the comments who said, we don't keep clean sheets anyway with a left footer there, so surely you just play an actual centre half there, regardless of their preferred foot. The build-up play this season hasn't really been there either. Going forward from defence, Dean and Maatsen offered nothing from that perspective in terms of progressing forward, so I kind of get that point also. If Bogard had come on, it's a bit of a catch-22 hypothetical situation, we'll never know, but if Bogard comes on at half-time and has a poor game, I think the discussion here is why are we throwing a youngster into that situation when an experienced pro like Dean could have just come across? You know what I mean? It's almost like
maybe
the one that didn't happen is the one that is criticised.
But changing those two positions, I think that was the problem for me. Say Maatsen's coming on, and I don't think he had a particularly good game anyway, Maatsen. And Luca Dean changing his role as well. I think you need some sort of continuity, and we know that left back Luca Dean solid, very few mistakes. Good delivery into the box as well. In the second half, we didn't really create anything. Maybe that's when we needed Luca Dean to put the ball in the box and find Duran and Watkins. Instead, we didn't have that. So it felt like we changed a bit too much when we didn't have to. When Bogard could have just come on, could Constance have gone left-sided centre-back? I know, again, that's going to change into something else. But he's experienced. He knows how to defend, obviously. But yeah, the point being is that Emery wants build-up as the left side, right side. And it's almost like kind of like a mirror, I suppose. You either build left side and you have your midfielder and your left back and then the right side as well. So interesting kind of dynamic, but yeah, we'll see how it kind of plays out in the coming weeks. That's what I'm interested about now. I'm kind of, whatever happened against West Ham happened. I think we were always going to struggle after Mings came off, be it Bogard coming on or Maatsen or even dropping a midfielder into centre-back. But now in the coming weeks, you're playing obviously Celtic, Wolves, Ipswich, potentially 2 more Champions League games. We don't know yet. Chelsea. So yeah, we are going to be tested again, but I'm hoping that we'll have a kind of solution for that problem now.
Yeah, comment here from Travis who says, I just can't believe how much one player going off changed the game yesterday. I know a centre-back is a crucial position, but it felt like no one stepped up apart from Kamara to reclaim control in the game.
Yeah, I agree.
Totally agree, yeah. There's still 11 players who are tasked with a job to complete at half-time, in the second half, when Villa were leading early. They've still got to get the job done. You can't just say, Mings went off, that's bad. Deal with it, basically.
Yeah. It almost felt like a little bit like, and I don't mean this in the kind of wrong way, but almost like we felt a bit sorry for ourselves. Like, we're playing loads of games. Our centre-back's gone off. We've got so many injuries. That's the kind of way it felt. And I'm not saying that that's how the players did feel, but that's in terms of how we played without real intensity in the second half. You must want it to go the other way of kind of the world's against us. We need to give it even more.
I thought we might see that for the referee as well. We kind of had that in the past with obviously Schmeichel for Celtic now, but when something happens in the game that the crowd get on top of, and it does feel a bit like we're being wronged here. Let's stick together and galvanise ourselves and get through it. I was hoping that was how we were going to react with the Mings thing, and like you say, it was the opposite. We almost felt like we've got an excuse to fall back on now if we don't play well or Mings went off. So what do you expect?
And whether that was the case or not, it just felt like we didn't have the galvanising effect, as you said. And I'm not saying that, that it's a very kind of strong showing of mentality if we did what I'm saying that I think we should have. So it's hard to criticise when I would have praised it a lot, if that makes sense. But that's kind of what I hoped for. Obviously, we didn't get that. At the same time, I think credit to West Ham, they've got injuries. They're without Bowen and the centre-back and other players as well, obviously Antonio. They didn't have a striker on the pitch, Fulkrug. So it's not as if they came to Villa Park with a fully fit squad either. It was almost I don't say the perfect time to play them, but in terms of the injuries and the players they were missing, it felt like that was a big opportunity for us. So it's a real shame that we couldn't maximise it.
Can you just check that your microphone's connected to the right one, please, while I go through the next question?
Yeah,
it sounds fine, but I'm not sure it's the same one.
Yeah, you're right.
There's a few questions. I don't have one specifically in front of me, but about swing calls and the kind of argument of why wasn't he on the bench? Why we still got 2 goalkeepers on the bench? That was the prime opportunity to say, well, that would have potentially been his spot to come on and play as a left-footed centre-back. We'll get to that in a second. And the other one, again, I don't have a specific because there's been absolutely loads, almost to the point that I'm quite shocked to see so many. Asking, where's Courtney Horse? What about him? Could he not come in and do a job? Firstly, I don't think he's registered to play in the Premier League squad either. Certainly isn't registered for the Champions League, so couldn't play Celtic anyway. But Courtney Hall's, I had a quick look through before we started, just so I knew we were doing this live and I might mess up. 17th of September 2022 is his last 90 minutes, a 2-2 draw for Watford against Sunderland. And 2nd January 2022 is his last Villa appearance, a 2-1 defeat away at Brentford. Played 2 very small sub appearances afterwards and had knee surgery sometime in early 2023. He hasn't played professional football for 2 and a bit years at any level. He's not going to come in and play for Villa now. Like, I don't know. I can't believe there's so many people saying, "Look, can he come in and do a job?" I don't even know if he's still like. He might as well be retired. Like, we don't hear anything about him ever. We don't even know if he's fit. He's not played at all. He's just not going to come back. He's just not an option, is he? I don't think he's registered either. So.
Well, that's literally, he's not an option because he's not registered. So that kills that. I
mean, the Courtney Hall situation is bizarre anyway, isn't it? What's happened to his career.
He was given a new contract, wasn't he? During, was it lockdown? I think
it was definitely still Smith, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was definitely in the Smith. Pretty certain anyway. Yeah, obviously hasn't gone to plan for different reasons. It's one that mentioned before the podcast on that we sometimes think, oh, should we ask about Courtney House? But there's usually a limit, obviously, on time and how many questions you can ask in a press conference. And usually there's more pressing subjects than to talk about Courtney House, when you would just expect Emery to say, oh, he's not with us. And that's that. But yeah, he'll leave the club when his contract runs up. I don't know if there's a situation where Villa will try to find an agreement to terminate or whatnot. I'm sure they have already. I can't imagine he's on too much money. Oh, well, I'm sure he's on a lot of money. But in
relative.
In full terms, yeah. Jesus. It'll be obviously one of the lower earners in the squad. So, yeah, I presume he'll just go when his contract is up. But not a situation where you can come in and perform. He wasn't a few... I can't remember when it was now. I don't know if it was last year or if it was just like half a year ago or 4 months ago. I can't remember now, but he did post... that he was in training, which I thought was a bit bizarre. I don't know if he's had problems with injuries and who trained and now he does again. I don't know. I don't know what the situation is because he's not going to be playing for Villa again. So, not anything that's going to come of that.
What about Swinkles then?
Swinkles. Yeah, well, Swinkles was a player that Emery earmarked at the start of the month and said he's going to go out on loan. There was interest in him last summer to go out on loan as well. I'm not too sure why that didn't happen in the end. I also know that Real Union, the Spanish club that obviously Villa partnered with, they were looking at him too. That obviously didn't happen. Instead, they have Finlay Monroe, who's a left-sided defender. But yeah, Swinkles, a player who has had interest from League One a lot. Whether he leaves on loan in the final week of the window, we'll wait and see. My guess would be, well, I don't know now. Maybe things have changed because of Mings' injury. I can't imagine we would think, oh, we need to keep Swinkles now for the next 3 weeks or so. If Mings is out for 3 weeks, just sort of, a random guess, then is it worth keeping Swinkles around when actually he needs not a full season, but a full half of the season left? He needs to be playing football then rather than maybe in 2 matches for us. And then he gets brought off at half time because he's not ready. It's that situation that we're in now. So I don't think it would impact much. Emery obviously sees the players day to day and will know where he is at in terms of his level. But I'd rather him go out on loan, to be honest, than to play for a few games.
Well, you could definitely keep him for Celtic. Would he be in the Champions League squad?
He's in the list. He's in the
list B, is it?
Pretty certain he's in list B. So that means he would be fine to play.
Yeah, so you keep him for Celtic and Wolves and then try and find a deal for him between Wolves and deadline day, potentially. Yeah,
or have it as a situation where, he goes to, say, Wickham and, it's like you get him on the 3rd of February after we play those games. So, you're right.
Those games out of the way first.
Yeah, that could be a situation that unfolds. But, yeah, I think you're right. It would be kind of pointless to send him out before then because maybe he will have to step up and play. What if Bogard gets injured or another centre-back gets injured? We will literally be down to the bare bones then. So, yeah, it would make sense to do that at the latest opportunity.
Cash and Dean at right centre-back and left centre-back to keep the right foot and left foot
alive. Remember that game? I think it was Millwall away when we played a full back line of right-backs. James Bree, Alan Hutton, El Mohammadi, and maybe there's a left-back in there as well. It might be Neil Taylor.
So I can't think who the fourth one would be, but yeah, I remember the others.
Yeah, I think we lost that 2-1. Abraham scored first, I think.
Dark time. Well, you have a cracking memory. I barely remember the game.
I was on a bus.
There's the circumstances.
I was on a bus. I was watching a I was doing it's when I was back at uni, so I was doing something for like the local paper and just plodding around Gloucestershire, finding some non-league game in a bus, and yeah, Millwall beat us 2-1, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, fair enough. A couple of comments I want to go to. One very quickly from Will, who says, "Have we won a single game after a Champions League match?" Yes, one. The first one after Young Boys, we beat Wolves, and I think we need to do the same again. We need to beat Celtic, and we need to beat Wolves after that. We've not won in any of the previous six Champions League games. The previous 6 matches after the Champions League fixture, we've failed to win, which is a poor record.
I felt like that could have been yesterday, though. But
yeah, I didn't think there was actually that much in that. I think there's context around it. I think we should have beat Bournemouth. The Man United game was turgid and probably should have been better. Should have got something yesterday. So there's context to it. But I said before West Ham, the longer that narrative continues, the more you just have to believe in it, because it can't be coincidence. And if we do beat Celtic on Wednesday and fail to beat Wolves, it's happened every time. But the first fixture like that, again, that can't be a coincidence. It's really pretty poor, actually. There's the other comment from Daniel, which feeds straight into a question we had before, and they're 2 contrasting things, and we'll do them at the same time. The question off social media from Paul said, "Can we please discuss this? We are still 4 points off top 4 thing. Do we really believe we are playing as well as Bournemouth and Newcastle / Forest / Chelsea, whoever you want to throw in there?" And Daniel Hughes, the complete opposite to that, says, "There's too many negative thoughts. We are 4 points behind 4th, still in contention for the top 8 in the Champions League, yet we haven't played well at all."
Yeah,
I find this quite strange as well. I'm more with Daniel's side of thinking, that I don't believe we've played well basically all season. So how the hell are we 4 points off top 4? Like, considering that a lot of the other teams in that period above us, Chelsea, Bournemouth, Forest, Newcastle, they have played well. They have got plaudits for being good sides that have kind of attacked that top 4 pretty well throughout the season. So if we're as bad as we all think we are, we should be where Spurs and Man United are, no? So to be 4 points away from me, I get this flip side of it that Paul's saying is like, come on, lads, you've got to admit that we're crap, basically. This 4 points off 4 thing is just an excuse, but we are where we are. That's not good, isn't it?
It's not a loaded thing. We're not saying that, we're 4 points off 4th, we're nearly there. I'm not even, Champions League would be great, but that's not even my target. Europa League is my target this season. 6th was my target. Like, 4 points off 4th is like the best thing we could possibly achieve this season. We're 4 points from, we're on the 27th of January. It's fantastic.
That is a good position,
great.
isn't it?
Yeah,
and I think
brilliant.
It's a better position having not played well. If you were Bournemouth or Forest, I mean, Bournemouth's aspirations weren't top 4, but if you're there and you've played really well, it's kind of, you'd be thinking, can we keep this going? Like Forest, a couple of injuries, are they going to fall away? For us to be 4 points off 4th, having played pretty crap all the way through, apart from maybe a 45-minute spell here and there, means that surely if Villa can just improve, they actually don't need to improve that much to get to where they would love to be in a perfect scenario, which is 4th place. And we all know 5th place could be Champions and should be Champions League anyway.
Exactly.
Which what we off that? Is it 3 points or 2 points? I'm not sure. It might be 4.
I think it's only.
I think it's 41 might be top 4 and 40 might be 5.
3 points. 3 points. Sorry, 4 points. Both
okay,
4
still
points.
4. Okay, fair enough. So that's a couple of fixtures could swing that based off them losing and us winning, which when you're not playing particularly well, feels like, oh, where are we even going to string a couple of wins together? But it's a marginal improvement for Villa to get to that position, which doesn't seem, as we said this before, it doesn't seem that hard to be better than we were for the first half of the season.
I've said it many times, but we play those teams at home as well. So I view it as we're within a point of them, because you have to win those games if you're going to finish above them, right?
Yeah.
So we play Newcastle at home, we play Forest at home, we play Chelsea at home. Obviously, we go to Bournemouth in the third last game this season, but we'll see how they go. They're doing really well at the moment, but they did this earlier in the season when they beat City and Arsenal, and then failed to beat West Ham, and they lost at Leicester. Things are going to change over the course of the season, and we're only just over halfway through it. So, my point and our point, when we say 4 points off 4th, it's a reality check of how well we're doing, in my opinion, in terms of league position and standings relative to our performance. And I don't think anyone expected us to be finishing 4th this season. Yes, that would be the target, and that's our dream position. But no one actually, I mean, maybe some people did, but the most Villa fans did not think at the start of the season, we'll finish 4th this season. I genuinely don't believe that. So to be where we are is a great kind of foundation in terms of points to then kick on. And this is something that Emery echoes as well. And he said it after the game yesterday of like, yeah, we've started the second half of the season pretty well. We want to basically be in the top 8 and then have a chance to be in the top 4, top 5 towards the end of the season. That's literally our campaign. Like, that is the objective. If there was a blueprint this season, it is literally that. Stay in the top 8. So be clear of 9th, because 8th could be European football as well. And then at the end of the season, the 5 finals, 6 games, 7 games of the season, if you're within 4 points of those teams, you either play them at home or you just put a run together, which we've done before. And we may not be in Europe in that situation, so we'll have what other teams have got on us now: Bournemouth, Forest, Newcastle, a week to prepare for matches. And that's something that we don't have. And that if we had that, then we would probably be above those teams. So for as bad as we've played, we have to give it context. If we're also playing in Europe, we know, as you just read out that stat there, Dan, 6 games after Champions League fixtures we haven't won in now. I'm sure that would have been different if we had more rest and recovery. We've had injuries because of that, and it's not kind of a sympathy plea at all, because we want to be in these competitions. We want to have lots of games. We don't want to. Well, we want to rest, but we don't want to have it because that means you're not.
You don't want to be playing
competitions.
40 games a season. 2 Premier League games in the first round of each domestic cup. Nobody wants that. You want to go as far as you can in those domestic cups, and you want to be in
and Newcastle. Maybe Newcastle's not the best example, but if you asked, in 5 years, you'd have played in European competition in that time, and we played Champions League last season. Maybe it's Europa League next season. I'd much rather have that, where you're in European competitions consecutively, and you have those great memories of playing the big teams and potentially winning silverware in one of those European competitions as well. I'd rather have that than be in and out of it. And kind of drop off. This is what we want. We want to be in Europe continually. And so the Champions League is the kind of blue chip competition. You get your money from it, and you get great nights against Bayern, and hopefully more to come in the knockout rounds. But then next year, maybe the dial switches to, okay, we're playing, still big European sides, but we've actually got a chance of maybe winning it, because Emery's won 3 Europa Leagues. Or is it 4 Europa Leagues? Sorry, I don't know the service there. Yeah, 4. Same as the Conference League, because those Europa League teams don't come down to the Conference League, and like when we were in it, when Olympiacos and Fiorentina both came down. So, yeah, like I'm absolutely fine with the situation. 4 points off 4th is good. There's nothing bad about it.
I think based off Unai Emery's era so far, from the back end of 2022, which I think was only a couple of games, to now, I think this season is an underachievement based off what we know Emery can do. But I think 2024 as a calendar year to now is our level at the moment, because the back end of 2024 wasn't very good. The start of this season and the back end of the calendar year 2024 hasn't been very good. Start 2025, we're unbeaten, aren't we? Despite besides the Champions League game, which feels a little bit flat, could have been more. But 2025 so far is points wise better than parts of 2024 were.
Yeah,
Villa, we've said it on this episode, we've said it before. It isn't a massive improvement. It's not that we need to make up 12 points to get anywhere near the top 5. Like, it's 4 wins before we even get level with whoever it is. 4 points really isn't a lot when you get into a state when you're playing 3 Premier League fixtures in a week.
Yeah,
those things can change really quickly. So if you're just in and around that conversation at the business end of the season, you can flip it like that, win 3 games in a row, and all of a sudden, 4th.
Yeah,
where's that come from?
I do think as well, like, we're kind of caught up in chasing perfection because we know that we can get it because we've done it with Emery. And perfection for us is going deep in the Champions League and finishing 5th or 4th and essentially being the Champions League next season. That would be everything. That's a perfect season. But because we're not there, it feels like we're, as you say there, that like underachieving, and we're not doing well enough. And actually, we're probably just doing as well as, like, do you know, this is who we are. Like, we're a strong Premier League side who should be in Europe every season because we're good enough for that. That's what we're doing. So I don't think we're underachieving necessarily. Maybe the performances that we're putting out in terms of just Premier League, aren't exactly what we want. But I just do think you have to give context of we've had injuries. The Champions League is a big factor in the summer as well. And we'll get on to it. It was kind of a strange summer window. January so far, I'll reserve my thoughts and feelings on that until February the 4th. We'll see how we end up. But ultimately, we are very, not very close. We're, in touching distance, really, which is very close. But we're within 4 points of the perfect scenario. And to not kind of be there doesn't mean that this is like, oh, this isn't good enough or this is poor. I disagree. I think this is where I hoped we would be within a shout of getting in the top 4, top 5 in April. And if we continue as we're going, I think we'll be in and around that conversation. With 10 games of the season remaining, we can then try and put a run together to give ourselves a fighting chance. That is all I could wish for this season, genuinely. If we were 9th, or it's kind of give it where like Brighton are or Brentford, that sort of scenario, that would be poor. That's below our expectation because we want to be in Europe, but we're not. We are. I don't know what league position we're exactly in because I'm not looking at it like that. I'm looking at the points we are away from the perfect scenario, and we're not far off it at all. So, I'm content with what we're doing. And as well, you have to marry it with the Champions League. We've got a great chance of finishing in the top 8, which is just stupid. Like we shouldn't be there. We should because of the performances, but as you say there, when we did our fake draw, when we did our incredible fake draw, we didn't put ourselves kind of within a.
We just said there's 9 really big clubs
that
should just be in the top 8 by default, like a Man City, PSG, Real Madrid that currently aren't in the top 8. That's made this format exciting and different. But we just thought, if just get through to the playoff round, that's all we want, and we've already done that. If we lose against Celtic, we'll be in that playoff round. So our pre-season expectation of it is where we are. Yeah. I know there's going to be a lot of people.
Can I just make a final point on that as well, Dan? Sorry.
Go on.
Just a very final point of. We got the Champions League last season, and I remember saying pretty clearly at the end of that, I just want to enjoy the next season, which is this season. If we were so focused on the Premier League and then Champions League was at the expense and we kind of dropped out of it and we maybe lost the knockout playoff and it was all a bit damp and it was a bit like, oh, well, we tried, but we didn't really compete. That would be a bit of what was the point in qualifying for the Champions League? Because, it brings money, but you want to enjoy it and create memories and beat these big teams. That's exactly what we've done so far. So, I'm like, what's the point in qualifying for the Champions League this season if next season we're just going to concentrate on the league again and not pay too much attention to it and kind of be like, oh, well, that's secondary. The league. You have to enjoy this period that we've got right now. In 5 years, 6 years, maybe things change. Hopefully it doesn't. But we've seen where Villa were previously. This is, at the moment, like a golden era for us in a long, long time. And we have to enjoy what we have right now instead of sort of being not moaning, but kind of being a bit depressed over certain things, or we couldn't beat West Ham or whatever. Well, in a few days, we've got a great chance to get the last 16 of the Champions League. Like we have to sort of marry both of those competitions up, in my opinion. So it's kind of my last point on that.
Did you listen to the post-match show yesterday?
I haven't had time to, sorry.
I mean, it was only like 12 hours ago. I said that to try and justify and cope with a bad result, I try and look at fixtures in couples. So Wolves and West Ham, I would expect 4 points from that. Beat West Ham at home and a draw at Monchi, I think is a decent return. We can do the reverse of that now by you have to go and beat Molyneux, beat Wolves at Molyneux, which isn't an easy task because we don't have a good record there. But if we did, you still have 4 points over those 2 fixtures. In the same way that look at the same opponent home and away. If you can get 4 points out of West Ham, I think that's a decent return. I would expect it to be a point at their place and you beat them at Villa Park, and we've done the reverse. So in isolation, Villa against West Ham, we are where I thought we'd be. We got 4 points out of them. If we can go and beat Wolves, we're where I thought we'd be based off this week alone. So we should have beat them. I'm not excusing that. But like points total wise, take performances out of it and feelings and emotion. I want 4 points this week as a minimum. And if we beat Wolves, we will get that. That's part of where I think we need to get to where we want to be to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I look at it in a bit of a different way, and I judge us against what other teams are doing points-wise. So if we fall 6 points away from the top 4 or top 5, that's when I think we know we kind of, we're running out of time there to sort of make that up. Yeah. So yeah, if we can beat Wolves and either we keep the distance we have or even cut it, then fantastic. As long as we're within 4 or 5 points of that top 4, top 5 come April, I keep saying it, fine. Go on a run after.
Sean asks, will you be doing a video about how the seeding goes for the Champions League draw, who would play who, etc. in the knockout stages?
We'll be here for a week.
we will do something about it, yeah. But if we don't get into the top 8, obviously all our focus will be on what happens with the playoff round.
Well, we'll know.
We'll talk about that on Thursday. We'll do an episode Thursday. If Villa get through to the top 8, I think we would roughly know some things. I can't remember.
We'll know.
There is a draw, isn't there?
We'll know one of 4 teams that we will play.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, no. Yeah, we'll know. Yeah, it'll be one of 4. Yeah, I don't know if I worded that correctly, but
yeah.
If we
So we'll have a rough idea.
if we don't, I know it's kind of going into the Celtic chat, we'll probably say it again because why not? But if we don't finish in the top 8, we'll know straight away who we're playing.
Yeah.
After full time, the ref will blow his whistle. Well, it depends obviously when the other game's finished, but we'll know on that night. Okay, here's who we're playing, and when we. I don't know if it won't be when we play them because there's.
We'll have the options of 2, won't we?
Yeah, and there's going to be that draw on the Friday, right? So that I presume that will then tell us
who's home and away first. I would have thought.
Well, I think we are home because we're away first. I'm pretty sure because we'll be higher ranked. Pretty certain that's how it goes. Right. Anyway, we won't get into it now, but we will be doing videos
basically, and it'll be more coherent than what that last 30 seconds.
Will it?
Probably not. No. Let's go on to Monchi. He's in the title, so we have to talk about it. Matthew and BZP have 2 questions before the show, so let's do those together. Is it time to look at Monchi's poor recruitment? 9 of the starters against West Ham were from the Gerrard/Smith era, and only Morgan Rogers was Monchi. Brackets, really Unai, though. We have less depth and no impact starters from Monchi. Now we only have 1 centre-back. The blame is falling on him for me. BZP says, has 87 million been spent wisely on Onana and Maatsen? Both very underwhelming so far. Over to you, John.
I think it's hard to judge.
Yeah, I agree on the last part.
Yeah, I don't think you can judge that. And by the way, £87 million in today's football, that's the price of one player like John Duran. So, I don't know how to put this, but everything's expensive these days.
I don't think you can judge
too much. Yeah.
Well, they're successful signings after 5 months? Have they been successful for this season? Obviously not. But could they be successful over the next 5 years?
Yeah.
We will wait and see.
Yeah, but I'd also say the best player for a club, an outfield player like Onana, and he was that for Everton, although he didn't play too much under Dyche, but there's different reasons for that. He's going to cost £50 million. Players are expensive these days. Like they just are. I know Louise was only sold for 42, but that was because we had a real dilemma, and that wasn't obviously Monchi's fault in terms of poor recruitment before that we've had to now make up for. E.g., signing Coutinho when it's just a dreadful decision in the end. One that was kind of a glamour signing twice. Anyway, we've had to make up for that. So that's a difficult situation for Monchi because he's dealing with PSR and with having to sell players like Louise right before the deadline. I mean, literally right before the deadline, we would have been getting probably double digits points deduction, if not. And we said at the time as well, don't think we, that we had to find a buyer. Find a buyer that wouldn't have just pulled our pants down, and we had to play the game essentially and bring in 2 younger players who do have resale value. I know Illing Jr. hasn't played too much for Bologna, but I do think there's a player there, and he has scored 2 important goals for them, one in the Champions League. Brenner is showing that he can cut it as well, playing for Valencia under Corberan at the moment. So yeah, I think it's one of those where you got to realise that we're in a really difficult position PSR wise. We don't have X amount of money to spend. We know that Maatsen was a bit of an accounting deal as well. The situation was that, of course, John Duran was wanted by Chelsea. We wanted Gallagher. Is there anything we could do there? That didn't come off because Gallagher didn't want to join Villa. So you got to be kind of taking different things into account as well. We haven't just handpicked some players. For example, Onana, we did. But I think we can all see why we have. I know his injury record at the moment isn't great, but the start of the season was fantastic. Started really well. How he plays with Kamara or without him and different things we'll see in the future. But we're only a few months into these players actually playing for Villa. I've seen enough from Maatsen and Nana to suggest that, yeah, they definitely can cut it. It's just about consistency and it's about playing them with regularity. I don't think anyone was expecting both players to hit it off straight away when you've got Luka Dean, who's been incredibly consistent, one of our best players since the start of last season. And Onana in a position where Kamara exists. We kept saying that even when Onana was playing well, we have one of the best holding midfielders in the Premier League to come back. Yeah. You know, when you are a big team and you have a good squad, you're going to be coming in and out of the team. It's just a shame that injuries have kind of plagued Onana a little bit at the start. It's not Monchi's fault that he's been injured. I understand he had an injury record before, but Emery wanted Onana. He wanted a modern 6. He wanted to mould that player. Monchi then carried out what Emery wanted. So, no, I think it's one of those where it's quite easy to look at those 2 players in particular and think, oh, that we've wasted money there. But there's a lot of context behind it. And I think even if Maatsen was playing to the best of his abilities, I still think Luka Dean probably gets a nod over him anyway. So it is difficult for him. And at the moment. Where else can we go with this? Rodgers, a player that Emery wanted. Got that deal done for £8 million, rising to 15. It's probably one of the best pieces of business that any club has done in the past year. Is it not? So yeah,
Tielemans on a free.
I don't. Was that Monchi?
I don't know. Possibly not.
I think it might. I think it was just before. Pretty sure. I think it was just before. I can't remember all the other players were signed, to be perfectly honest with you. Diaby was obviously signed. That wasn't probably the best fit in the end. But we've managed to offload him and kind of keep our books balanced. So that kind of proves how difficult this is. We all thought Diaby would then kind of kick on a gear this season, but we couldn't do it because then
also
we had
on
to
the
balance
Maatsen
again.
thing. Sorry, mate. On the Maatsen thing, we know there's the PSR stuff there. There's a comment from Tom who says PSR is no excuse for the Onana signing, but let's not forget there was business done with Everton from a accounting books. I know that was Timmer Abunam and Dobbin, but Onana is involved in that to a lesser extent as well. The Maatsen one, Kellerman went to Chelsea for what, 20 million was it in the end?
19.
Wasn't playing for us, hasn't played for them. Just subtract that from Maatsen's transfer fee, and that looks like Maatsen for 17, 18 million. Less than, I think.
But
that's one for the future, isn't it, I think?
Onana was also a player that Emery wanted. So if we're going to throw shade at one person, then do you know what I mean? This is a signing that the club backs. It's a situation where, there'll be thousands of players on a database, and then it'll be cut down to 15 or something. And we saw that picture, didn't we, at the start of the season when it was players of interest with the club's recruitment staff around the table. And then it kind of whittles down to a number of players, and then it's a situation, okay, which ones do we really want? Which ones can we go for? Who's first priority? So, for example, Loic Bade, they would have had a list of players there, or the right back even. The right back's probably even a better one to go with. The Mingueza, they had the Real Vallecano right back. They had, obviously, Andres Garcia and the Brazilian player. I said Mingueza,
Sorry.
A list of players. And then it's about, okay, which one suits financially? Even like the 1/4 one at the moment, are we thinking that maybe because Bade was the primary target and that didn't come off, maybe 1/4 is the player that they're going to have up until now, or maybe they revise that in the summer and think, well, actually, we want to do this in the summer, but then Foyth will be coming in now as a backup or backup in two positions as well, so versatility and depth. So I'm not going to judge every player on what I've seen in half a season. I think that's quite unwise. There's many players that have come to Villa before and have struggled to adapt straight away, and all of a sudden they're fine. Look at Yuri Tielemans, for example, last season. That took him about 4 months, which is obviously less time than Maatsen or Onana, and now he's absolutely crucial. So yeah, it's not something that I'm going to criticise just yet, but I understand the kind of feelings of we've wasted this money and this could have been spent better. Yeah, ideally, but again, we're talking about perfect situations that we sign a player that comes in and, like Onana did, score 3 times in the first 3 away games. Is he going to continue that? Probably not. But yeah, injuries, not ideal. Barkley's been injured as well, and that was a minimal fee. McGinn's had injuries. Players are going to have injuries because they're playing a lot of football. Hopefully, he can kind of get that out and have a bit more of a consistent run of running the team. Like, I don't know. I get it. I get the kind of criticism that Monchi may be getting at the moment, but it's an incredibly difficult situation that we have juggling this PSR, and also I know he's the name that will be attached to these signings, but none of this is done without Emery's say so. Nothing. Apart from maybe a Nedeljkovic, a player that he thinks, okay, this player can come in and his value will grow a lot. Nedeljkovic or other players that we've signed that are young, but if they're coming into the first team and going to be competing for the starting 11, Emery has the final say on those players.
Yeah, there's a comment just before it's gone past now. So a lot of people here watching, which I'm really grateful for, saying you can't question Monchi. You can, we absolutely can question it, but I think there was comments at the very start saying like, is he on the verge of the sack? No, I'd be very surprised if Monchi was on the verge of the sack based off what? That Maatsen's not played many minutes yet. Okay, well that's on Emery, isn't it, to decide who plays? It's not Monchi's fault. And Will said, throwing shade at Monchi and the signings we made is ridiculous considering the mess they were left in by Gerard Lang and Purslow. That's it for me. I think we were quite a mess 2 years ago when we were not only where we were in the league, but big contracts to players that, let's face it, nowhere near good enough on massive wages. Emery comes in straight away and ships off Danny Ings and Dendoncker and all these players that are just not the standard we need on massive money. That's not Monchi's fault. Yeah. They're trying to pick up the pieces of the mess that was left behind them. It's a bit like the change of a government, isn't it? It's not just on the new government or what they've done. They're picking up what was done before.
This isn't you know, when you load up a FIFA save on career mode and then I've got 50 million to spend. He hasn't just spent it and kind of wasted it. There's a lot more that goes into it than just spending it on 2 players. Again, Maatsen, they've had to think about that as a PSR. There's a reason why we signed him before June for Chelsea. Yeah. And Onana was a player that, again, that they view as a profile that is very rare at the top level of football. And he's done okay. It's not a waste of money. Like, not every player is going to set it off straight away and be, he's actually worth £100 million. He's still a £50 million player. Like, it's competition and it's depth. It's all these different things. And to pay, if you're a Champions League club, if you're going to buy a player that's going to somewhat improve your 11, you've got to pay money for them. You're not going to get every player for 20 million. So the money is going to be a lot every window because we're a Champions League competing club. You're going to spend money. So, yeah.
You've got to spend money, otherwise we wouldn't be in the position we're in now. We'd be where Spurs are.
Yeah,
you can't. That? Would people prefer us to come on this podcast and go, we're 15 points off 4th? We're 4 points off 4th. We're good for where we are, considering the task we've been given. Will says, a mess. These players got us to the Champions League. Yeah, the ones that are still here. I'm talking about the ones that we're trying to get rid of, like Diego Carlos. Getting 10 million for him, right?
Yeah, I think the comment meant a mess in like what other people may be saying. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe it was
I think I'm saying that Villa were a miss. We were not 17th when Emery came.
Yeah, we were. Yeah,
players that we've got rid of. Yeah. That's the miss part. The players that we are here with now want to keep are the good ones, basically, and even some of those will be improved upon. I'm talking about the Carlos, Coutinho, Cordy Hawes, less so, but players that are just still here and around the place. It's dealing with the mistakes of the previous regime that is what it was a miss.
Yeah, and we have to balance that, don't we? As I said, you're right, and that's all happening still now and will happen again in the summer and maybe in the next. But yeah, I'd also say as well, kind of as a side point, all of our players that have big futures in the game are all locked down on really long contracts now. Rodgers, Duran. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there isn't a player there where you're thinking, he needs a new apart from Kamara, but even he has, a decent length in his contract remaining. It's just a situation where Villa want to reward him, basically, and put him on longer terms. But those players, there isn't a situation where some of those are going to be worth less. In terms of the assets we have, if you look at the squad, and this is probably a good barometer of what job Monchi and Emery and Vidigani have done, which has been accepted. I mean, God, we're in the Champions League nearly last 16, so it's mental to even say this, but like the assets that we have, and I know people don't want to hear it, but we're living in the world of PSR. We have some serious. John Duran's worth what, 80 to 100 million pounds, just as one, and he's not even in theory anyway. He's not a starting 11 player. You can go across the squad, and every position there's a player there that's worth a lot of money. So Villa are protected essentially. They don't want to sell their best players every summer, but if they had to make a sale, they can, and that in itself is a big tick, because there was other clubs who can't sell because of contract lengths, because of ages. We have young players who are worth a load of money, and that is a good thing for our 11, but also in terms of protecting us transfer-wise, because unfortunately PSR exists and helps the Big Six, and is something that we are dealing with because, as you say, of previous errors.
Yeah, if you pluck a random side like an Everton who have had PSR problems before, which is probably a terrible example because they shifted Onana for 50 million, but they will have X amount of players who are worth good money, and then lots more players who are worth, 20 million, say. If they were in trouble, they would have to sell a handful of players. If Villa were in trouble, they'd probably have to sell one, maybe two.
Yeah, and I'd still back them to replace with the right players that Emery would want. For example, if Duran leaves, I'm not saying he's going to leave in the last week of the window, but if he does, or if he leaves in the summer, they'll have a plan of who to bring in. Would it be a player that can link rather than players? And number 9, Baron Watkins, so I'm talking like a Cunha or a João Felix kind of profile of player. That's something that Emery's obviously wanted previously. So there's always a plan there. And I just think it's easy to say, sign Maatsen for £37.5 million. What a waste of money that is. Well, he helped Dortmund get to the Champions League final, playing for one of the biggest clubs in Germany, a club that feed out talent every day. At the moment, it's Gittins and it's other players that they're going to sell for hundreds of millions of pounds combined. A player who's come through the Chelsea system, a player that I actually think has done well, to be fair, in short cameos, helped us win the Leicester game, for example, changed the game against West Ham on the opening day of the season. I think it's very easy to look at, we lost the ball yesterday. Should be half the price kind of thing. We're halfway into the season pretty much, and he's still a young player learning under Emery. It's probably the hardest thing to do, not in terms of him being a bad manager, but in terms of the information that he's getting from him, and we saw this with Tielemans, a very intelligent player. Look how long he took. Again, less than Maatsen, but I just think it's so much more complex than just looking at a player and thinking, oh, I'm quite underwhelmed by him, therefore it shouldn't have been this amount of money. Who, when we signed Maatsen, said, oh, that's a poor signing. Or who, when we signed Nana, said, oh, that's a poor signing. What are we signed him for? Yes, you may say, oh, but we've already got Dean. Okay, well, it's depth. Or when Anana comes in and I said straight away, okay, well, how does he play with Kamara? Again, it's depth. It's a modern 6. If we have to sell a big player in 2 years, this is what Monchi said as well. It's about having, it's kind of like a conveyor belt. If you have one really important player in one position, well, there has to be one underneath him as well. And we've got that in Watkins and Duran. We've got that in Kamara and Nana. And again, Nana's not at the level yet, but hopefully in a few years he will be. It's having that, and that's really important. So I'm fine with what we've done so far. Again, the January window, I have some reservations on, but that's because we have a week left of the window. So, won't judge that until the end of it.
The final question I wanted to end on. There's loads more, but we're slightly running out of time, as we always tend to do on a live one. This is less about John Duran. Ricardo says, "What's more valuable to Villa? 1 John Duran or no PSR issues, and maybe 2 to 3 50 million players come in the other way?" Now, I'm not going to ask this to be, would you rather sell Duran and sign 3 50 million players?
PSR issues exist anyway, but
that's not really the point. The thing with PSR, the issues do exist, and everyone will have to deal with them at some point. Every single club who is not Chelsea or Man United, who just make stupid amounts of money and can spend whatever they want effectively without any repercussion. I do wonder whether the big sale, whether that's Duran, Kamara, Konsa, whoever it is, the sale that is 60 to 90 million, that one big one, not a Bailey for 25 or a Ramsey for 35, like a big end sale, a Grealish one, if you like, that is always in the accounts for a couple of years because it was that big. I do wonder whether that kind of short-term sacrifice, short-term pain that, yes, we've lost Duran, Kamara, whoever, who is a very good player, but allows us to move in ways that we've not been able to move in for a while from a PSR perspective. Obviously, everybody knows that the sale money goes directly into your account. So let's just use the figure of 80 million. If you sell somebody for 80 million, plus 80 goes into your accounts, that looks good. If you sign 4 players for 80 million combined, that is not 80 million out again. It's 80 million divided by their contract length, which is probably going to be 5 years per season. So that would be 40 million, I think, per year.
Amortization.
Something like that. So still a 40 million profit, but you bought in 80 million's worth of talent as well. I appreciate this is getting a little bit confusing. I feel like if we don't make that big sale, we're always on the kind of the verge of PSR. We're always a little bit closer to it than we would like. That allows us to spend and do some business, but it is a Barkley or a Garcia or Philogene to a lesser extent, that kind of 10 to 20 million pound signing. We can do a few of those and keep ticking along, but they're not, or very rarely, going to be the player that takes you up to that next level. No. You need a Diaby, a Torres, a Bailey, like that big signing to come in and help you elevate to a further level. So I wonder whether a big sale, whoever that is, whilst that short-term pain is there, will help Villa in the long run to go, right, you've got a great 11, 12, 13 players there. But by selling this one, you've now got a great 15 or 16 to actually rely on. And that squad can take you further than this squad could, but with that one player in. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Yeah. What you're saying is we need to buy elite.
We need wiggle room, basically.
We need to buy elite level players to get to the next level or stay at the best level, shall I say, rather than, as you say, buying players and hoping that they can improve. Although, while that is very important and trying to get bargains, for example, selling Philogene for Marlon, I think it's a great piece of business because, for different reasons. But you're right.
And if you sign Garcia now for 8 million, but he's not quite ready, but in 3 years he is, and he's worth 50, that allows us to kind of repeat the cycle again. But Villa are all, at the minute, are in the cycle of just kind of treading water a little bit, whereas a big sale would allow us to go, right, here's 3 real high quality signings that will hopefully elevate us again.
And you kind of mentioned John Duran there, and I've got a bit to say about him. I listened to what Carragher said before the match, and I think he spoke real sense. And I do think Carragher is probably the best pundit, actually, in terms of how we analyse some situations. And I think he's spot on with Duran, to be perfectly honest.
Not on the price tag, but yeah.
No, not necessarily on the price tag. And obviously Villa are insisting, Duran's not for sale. What happens if a massive bid comes in, though? I'm not sure. They're obviously assessing their options if that is the case. But it just feels like a situation where, as he said, he's not actually in the starting 11. Villa have done what they've done essentially without Duran. And I know at the start of the season he helped us get over the line by scoring some goals.
I'm not sure about
that. Sorry, let me rephrase. Last season and the season before that,
okay, yeah,
Ollie Watkins was undisputed. Number 9, scored loads of goals, got loads of assists. We've done what we've done essentially without Duran to a point. This season is different because Watkins was injured for a little bit and wasn't particularly fit. So Duran's played a huge part in our season so far, absolutely. But as you say there, Dan, if he's the sacrifice, it would be horrible because that's a fantastic talent and an incredible player. The way he plays the game as well is kind of unlike many of the strikers. But that, similar to the Luiz sale, I'm kind of getting to the point where it feels like that makes the most sense, if I'm being perfectly honest. Because if you sell another player that would be worth a lot of money, call it Kamara, Konsa, that's a real blow to the starting 11, especially Kamara. And again, Konsa as well. Look at our defensive problems that we have now. Martinez is exactly the same. So what player is worth a lot of money that you can firstly replace in that area of the pitch, as I just said then, Felix, Cunha, just as 2 players, and there'll be others as well. And that allows you, as you say there, Dan, to buy other players who can improve you in different areas of the pitch, which is more pressing than up front. Because we have Ollie Watkins, and
we've got let's say 80 million worth of talent sat on the bench when we could do with 80 million pounds worth of talent spread out across the starting 11, like at right back or centre back or left wing or whatever.
This isn't like me saying, "Oh yeah, sold around in the final week of the window." No, do what is sensible. But if he stays, then great. I think we have a top player to help us hopefully get over the line this season and get the Champions League and go far in that competition as well. But then in this summer, I do think it's a situation where let's be real. Like, we have more pressing issues. What's the one position where it's not a luxury to have Duran and Watkins? But I said at the start of the season, or just after the start of the season, maybe, that there's no team in the Premier League who have 2 better strikers than Villa. And do we need to have them when they're that good? I know that sounds crazy.
No, but the likelihood is of a better fit would be, as we've said before, I'm not saying Felix or Cunha specifically, but we've said if Villa are going to play a 10 and a striker, you sign a starting 10 who is very good, a £60 million talent who's going to play every week with Watkins behind him, but also is capable of playing as a sole number 9 or a false 9 or whatever. That when Watkins needs a rest, this guy pushes further forward.
Yeah.
That's how you get the best out of that kind of profile rather than an out-and-out striker swap where how do you keep them both happy?
You can try and replace Duran in a different way, but the key thing here is that, as you mentioned earlier, then it allows you to buy another, I don't know, midfielder, centre-back, right back, left back, whatever you want to do. You have that bit of flexibility then, whereas if you sold a Kamara, what the hell do we do there? How do we? I know Anana's been brought in to maybe long-term replace Kamara or play alongside him, but he's not ready right now and probably won't be in the summer to do that. There's very few players that can do what Kamara can do. And there's a lot of money that you have to spend to try and replace Konsa. For example, if Konsa was sold, Villa obviously don't want to do that. But I'm saying if he was, because we had to make a sacrifice, so we wanted to make some money. What do you do then? Just try and buy. I'm just kind of thinking of players similar, like Gay. How much is he? 70 million. So you're essentially not really seeing much for you. Just keep Konsa. So it just kind of is coming a bit apparent to me now that, like it did in kind of Luiz situation back around this time last year, just feels like that would be the most sensible sale to make. And I'm not going to kind of go on about it too much now, and it's not a bad thing. Like, Villa will be in a strong position, whatever, I think, and that's, as I mentioned earlier, kind of a credit to Monchi and the club that we've developed these really young players to the point where if we were to lose one, it's not the end of the world because we're not relying on them. I know we relied a little bit on Duran at the start of the season, but I think we know now Watkins now is past his injury issues and he's got his fitness back.
Yeah,
he's going to contribute over the course of the season. He may miss a few chances, but he's already on 10 goals and quite a few assists already. So, yeah.
Okay, John, we're going to wrap up there. We're approaching the hour mark, so that's enough for one episode. There were still lots of questions that we couldn't get to, didn't have time for, but some of them are not time sensitive to this week, so maybe we'll answer them next week if I remember to include them in next week's running order. Stuff about like Kamara being the best midfielder in the league, best defensive midfielder in the league. Certainly up there, but let's talk about that another time. We will be doing a Celtic preview on Tuesday, which we'll probably record at some point later today. There is a Unai Emery press conference tomorrow, so it will go out before that. The post-match show will be back late Wednesday evening, and then we'll look ahead to Wolves after we get Celtic out of the way. John, thank you very much for joining me on this live version of the Claret and Blue podcast. Thanks everyone who watched along on YouTube this lunchtime. If you're watching on catch up or listening, get involved in the comment section on Spotify or YouTube and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you fancy. Thank you for watching or listening, and we'll see you Tuesday. Bye everyone.